We know life can be messy, and that's why you need a plan. Here at the Lifestyle Group, we want to meet you where you are in life and help you create the best home remodeling plan for your lifestyle. To us, plan is more than just a word. It's an acronym we live by for our clients. To always be prepared, to lead you through the process, to adapt to what you need, and to make sure there are no surprises. Each month on the Do You Plan podcast, we'll look into home remodeling projects that have inspired us, taught us, or can teach you for your future home remodel.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Do You Plan podcast. And I have my guest today, Todd Ketchum from Victory Surfaces. And I'm very interested to talk to Todd because we know each other, but we haven't spent a lot of time together. So with no preparation at all, one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to learn a little bit more about each other. At least I'm going to learn about you and how you've evolved into your business and the things that you do today. But for a little bit of background for your benefit, so as I do these podcasts, I've kind of jumped around to topics that interest me. And as you know, you've kind of been on my list for a while, and we just found the opportunity to connect.
Right.
And we do a lot of business with your company, even though you and I never interact, which is actually really a great testament to your people, because you've got really good people there, really good people. And that relationship is a really important one to me. But the reason I wanted to talk to you and not your people is because you are a wealth of knowledge, I know, and you have a lot of history in this business. And as I'm trying to add value to people in my world who would potentially be thinking about a remodeling project, I can talk to you down a couple of different paths. And the path that I want to start with is really helping people understand when they're thinking about buying granite or quartz, like what is it that they're buying and what is it that they should think about? Because I don't think people understand that. And to have somebody be able to explain some of those differences and eliminate some of the myths, I think is an interesting path to go down. And then I want to maybe go down the path of talking a little bit more about business and what it's like running this business in your world today. Because I feel like there's probably two different types of listeners that would capture value from different things, right? But to begin with, can you give me a little bit of background? I know your background to be that you were with Santa Rosa and you started this company, and that you guys can do a lot of very unique things that others just don't have the ability to do. Now I want you to elaborate on the fact that you didn't just pop out of the womb and pop up at Santa Rosa and then start this. So talk me through your background. You know, as you came into the work world, have you always been in this business, and how did you migrate to where you are today?
Well, I started actually in the terrazzo industry, which we still are heavily involved in. Yeah. It was in the shipyards, believe it or not, in San Diego, California.
Really?
And that was in 1979. So I married my wife out there. She was from Indiana. So I went from the shipyards to land, basically, and in Tipton, Indiana. Well, there's no terrazzo being done in Tipton, Indiana, so I looked for terrazzo companies in Indianapolis. Midwestern Terrazzo is where I first started for a really brief period of time, not even a year. He was an older gentleman, and the business was closing down, basically. But when I hired on, he was still trying to keep it going. So during that time, brief period, I knew of Santa Rosa because of competitor companies and union membership. So you know the workers from all these other companies. So they were a union company. So when John Fargo, Midwestern Terrazzo, started to close down, I went and met Louis Carraro, which he was the vice president at that time of Santa Rosa. So that was in the early 80s. It was 83 when I started there. And I went over to Santa Rosa, met Louis Carraro. He was the vice president of the company at the time, and told him of my situation, that I'd been working for John Fargo. He was slow. I was a young man. And, so we got into that. industry. That's how I got into Santa Rosa. Then it progressed into Santa Rosa started doing countertops. I still was in the field, but we would come in and fabricate stone right there on the shop floor. We were cutting with hand saws at that time.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And it was mainly granites, because what had happened is Corian, that you're really familiar with, they hit the market really hard and basically wiped out Formica, if you will, the laminate tops. And they were pretty inexpensive when they first came out. And they flooded the market with it. And then their prices went up really fast from there. As soon as they got market share, they started increasing their prices. The margins started going up. Well, it made it to where granite was still not reasonably priced, but expensive, but it wasn't that much more expensive than a Corian top. There wasn't very many people doing it at that time. Tremaine, that you know of Tremaine, Chance Brothers, a lot of these guys that were doing it, it was because we did marble and granite in buildings and commercially. So we had access to importing stone, importing cut to size stone. So we were already in that market as far as fabricating for job sites. So then that turned into the market, if you will, when it comes to granite fabrication. So throughout my being in the field and doing terrazzo and tile, it got to where I became an owner in the company. And that was at the very end of the 90s, right towards the end of the 90s, early 2000, and became an owner in the company and literally came in and took over the marble shop. And it was, at that time, we were cutting like 7,000 square feet a year. And within 4 years, we were cutting about 70 to 80,000 square feet of stone. And it was just a matter of
how the market moved.
Well, and it was the mentality too. You know, a lot of we were still doing granite countertops kind of on the side. Even though we did it, it was still not a market-driven thing. Once more people, of course, market share went up. Us being Santa Rosa, it increased the market share dramatically. And we had already were doing bigger homes and tile and ceramic tile, marble, showers and facades and fireplaces. So it's not much different today.
And then at that time in that world with Santa Rosa, were you doing equal parts residential and commercial?
No, we were much bigger commercially in 80s, 90s.
Okay.
We started getting into some of the larger homes late 90s.
Okay.
Circle Mall time.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of period of people were thinking about what was happening during that period of time.
Right.
Was during then. We started getting into larger and larger homes.
Okay.
We never did a lot of smaller homes just because, a lot of the smaller homes weren't just our style. We just weren't, we were always big jobs, bigger.
Yeah. Higher price point.
Yeah. Something where you're doing a lot more than just one kitchen, We had several contractors that would do remodeling. And so they would use us because we were so experienced. They didn't want to have a project go sour or just difficult, because it's a difficult material to work with.
Right.
And at that time, a lot of it was granite. We were doing a lot of marble. Once again, just because we were Santa Rosa, we had the capabilities of not doing just granite. So even some of our higher end work, if you will, was going marble. Marble was still looked at as real expensive. Mm-hmm. And so we were doing a lot of those.
And then at what point did you make the transition from Santa Rosa to your new endeavor that you've been in now for many years?
Sure. Well, in late 2009, when things started getting kind of ugly for everybody in the entire market, we made some structural changes within the company and within the management. I became the president of the company
Mm-hmm.
and stayed president until 2014. And at that time, the market was doing better. Everybody was feeling better, seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Got towards the end of 2014 and thought it was time to make a change.
Yeah.
And one of my clients, Gary Edwards, people would be familiar with Deem Electrical and Mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
He was a client, and when I left Santa Rosa, we had a lot of conversations. Obviously, when he was a client, as you know, you can get become quite acquaintances with your clients in this trade. And I told him what I was wanting to do, and so he basically founded Victory Surfaces and made me the president of the company, obviously. And then we've come forward to now, which we're into basically our 8th year, and pretty strong company. Yeah. And we basically do what I've done my entire life, working, terrazzo's marble and granite chips. So it's always been kind of the stone industry, if you will.
Yeah.
And so we do quite a bit of terrazzo. We're still doing very large commercial projects. And then, as you know, we do a lot of countertops.
Yeah.
A lot of it. Once again, still high-end homes. But people think of high-end homes as just being the big monsters that are really expensive. I think homes, even at a moderate level, are still high-end if they're putting nice materials in them. So you don't have to a remodel or something doesn't have, it's everything's relative.
Yeah.
So we try, like clients like you, we try to focus on people that understand our expertise and are looking for the quality that we put out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every time I have a conversation with a potential new client, I ask them a quick series of questions. How long have you been in the house? How long do you plan to stay? Because those things are good indications of how they're thinking about the project. Then I ask them, if I give you 3 buckets, tell me how you're thinking about this project. And the first bucket is basic and functional and, inexpensive, maybe not cheap, but, just basic. The middle bucket is, I call it nice, not crazy. But you might have a few splurge items here and there, but otherwise it's middle of the road. And then the third bucket is, I'm going to do it once, I'm going to do it right. Costs are not going to be the factor of what I decide, maybe this is my forever home or my long time home, or I've been waiting on this for 20 years and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. I can take somebody that's in that middle bucket and still use them or still use you on a project for them, because the splurge item might be doing nice countertops, might be doing some nice feature in it that they'll compromise on other things that aren't as important, but they want that. And then from my perspective, I want it done right without the risk. I want partners that I can work with that do what they say they're going to do, that are going to stand behind it, that are going to make things right. And you guys are that kind of partner for me. And so you give me an incredible amount of trust that I don't have to worry about this phase of a project. And therefore I can turn that around and tell my client, we have no concerns here. They're outstanding, and we're not going to have issues with a countertop that's thousands of dollars. Like, it's going to get done right. And that's a big, big deal because it's a huge risk item.
Oh, it's huge. And I think a lot of the things that you run into, especially in our industry, is things happen. Timing, accidents, what have you. We're working with people, and we're working with stone, we're
with
working
heavy things.
Yeah, and I think what we always bring to the table is that assurance that even if things happen that we don't like, it's our initial thought is we take care of all of those situations. Yeah. We make situations go away because we know there's going to be situations. So it's easy to focus, of course, in our industry, on the easy things.
Right.
You go measure something, you make it, you put it in, you leave, everybody's happy, and that's easy. That's the easiest part of the things we do. The hard part is when something's not quite going right, or the timing issues, material doesn't look exactly what they thought it was going to look like when they get it in the house. So there's a lot of those things that you can do up front, but the follow through though, in making that it's going to be done, is we focus a lot on that.
It's amazing how just committing to doing the right thing or doing something so simple will earn you relationships forever.
It's huge.
Right. And so you almost, I take the mistakes that happen over the course of time, and nobody wants them. I mean, you don't want them. I don't want them. None of us want them, but they almost become marketing opportunities just to show people we're the right part. You chose us for a reason. This is that reason. And it really is true. I've never had a situation with you guys at any point where something wasn't resolved, or I even had a headache in trying to get it resolved.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, it's immeasurable. It really is.
Well, in a lot of what happens in our world and people that work with me and around me, it's addressing something immediately as if it's nobody's fault, but we're the ones that have to fix it.
Yeah.
And you fix it immediately is really easy to call you up. Or you work a lot with Jim Potts.
Yeah.
Call him up and he might call you and say, Geoff, we're all done. Customer's happy. They're gone. The wrong sink was because of this or because of that. And then it ends up being a shared responsibility where if your first reaction as a company to try to blame everybody else but yourself, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth for one, and also makes the solution to the problem a lot harder to get to quickly.
Yeah. Because now you're injecting emotion into the conversation.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
As soon as your clients are our clients, as soon as an end client thinks that the big companies or they're the little guy, and here they have a problem, and the first reaction they hear from us is, well, what did you do? And immediately they start thinking that they're going to be held responsible for it or cost them money.
Right.
And as soon as if you can take that out of the equation immediately, it really makes the solution easy. Down the road, it may be one of somebody else's issue, but it shouldn't be at that moment.
Right. Just to get it fixed.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about stone options in the marketplace today. And you started mentioning from historical perspective, Corian, marble. Now we've got granite in the marketplace today. We've got quartz that plays a huge role in the marketplace today. How do you, with your years of history and your experience, how do you look at all of these products and position each of these things in the market today? Because even Corian's trying to make their own version of a comeback, right?
Oh, sure.
And coming out with now looks that mirror and mimic the quartz.
Yeah, trying to stay
relevant and leverage that name that people still, that's like, you think of a facial tissue as Kleenex, you think of solid surface as Corian. Like they bought that market. They captured it. Yeah. So how do you look at the products that are out there and position them, each one?
If I'm looking at product alone, not from a design point or from an end user point, my preference at looking at materials is what they're used for and what the easy of maintenance and all those things. So that's low hanging fruit. Yeah. It's easy. So I go to marbles are historic. So they've been around forever. It's really easy to identify them. It's really easy to use them. And they can be used for multitudes of things. Okay. So as far as a material, quartz, and a lot of people confuse that with quartzites, so.
And I want you to talk a little bit about that difference because people don't understand that difference.
Well, quartz, what they did is the marketing people and the manufacturers of quartz, which is man-made, basically just took the prime material that's in quartz countertops and called it quartz because the majority of your quartz countertops are sand. it's sand from Israel or sand from Canada, or there's all these sands. And if everybody can think of quartz, if you look at the quartz crystal, it's this perfectly clear, real pretty, light shines through it, quartz. Well, that's where the quartz countertops come from.
And they just grind it down and grind it down and grind it down, right?
Yeah, they crush it. And so when you're looking at some of the different quartz, there's a lot of manufacturers out there. So we could name them all. I don't ever think of any particular manufacturer of quartz as being the reason I would use them. I look at what their colors are.
Okay.
To me, quartz countertops are what originally brought a color palette to our market.
Right.
So you would have,
because they could control it.
That's exactly right, and repeat it.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. So what they do is they crush quartz, crush a sand, and a couple of other minerals, and they add it to a resin, and they basically mix them together and put them in a pan, if you will. They're big pans, the size of the slabs that you see.
Yeah.
And they, under pressure, they pressurize it and compact it, squeeze the resin out from it, and let it get hard. They grind the surface of it and expose that aggregate and then polish it. Well, what's funny about that whole conversation right there is that's terrazzo. So, so that's what terrazzo industry has been doing forever, is taking aggregate, mixing it with a binder, which is originally was cement, now it's epoxy resin. They place it, they grind it, expose it, and polish it.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing as quartz. So there's a lot of different manufacturers, like I said, but it's the color palette that drives me in that equation.
So when I think of terrazzo, I think of something that's going to last a long, long time. Right?
That's right.
It's going to be very durable.
That's right.
Do you view quartz through the same lens?
I do. Excuse me, if we want to speak about the difference between quartzite and quartz for a minute.
Yes.
Quartzites are literally taken out of the ground in the form that you see them in.
Yeah.
When you go into a facility that has a lot of stone in it. The quartzites, the reason you're starting to see quartzites more and more and more is the technology behind getting them out of the ground and cutting them.
Okay.
So a lot of these quartzites are extremely hard. So like on the Mohs scale, when we talk about the Mohs scale, like the difference between, a pencil all the way up to, or chalk, all the way up to a diamond, the quartz is up there 7s and 8s.
Yeah. What
you see when you look at them, though, is they have micro fissures.
Yeah.
They have impurities. There's something that the quartz market, the man-made, can take that. Oh. If you don't want to call it a quality, they can take that out. Where in the quartz, if you're going to get a big, beautiful slab of quartzite and it's come out of the ground, you have to accept some of the...
Some people might see them as flaws or
that's right.
blemishes, but they're really just part of the natural, just like on a slab of granite.
Yeah. So, but it's a rock taken out of the ground, and from somewhere in the world where there's many places in the world that they come out of. I mean, Brazil is a real big market for cutting stone out of the ground that are quartzites. A lot of them come from there, but the fact that the technology now that they can get them out of the ground, get them to us in the thickness that we want them in, and they're already finished and polished is a pretty recent attribute to that.
Is when you say the technologies come along, do you mean even more recent than doing the same thing with granite, or that it was harder to get quartzite out previously? Because clearly there's a lot more quartzite in the marketplace than there was ever before. So tell me how it's different.
It's a lot harder than granite to fabricate. as far as out of the ground.
Is that why it's inherently more expensive when we see them? Yeah.
Well, and it's clear and
more brilliant. I mean, some of them are amazing.
Popularity has a huge part of costs when it comes to our commodities, which is stone. So the white marble coming out of Carrara is a real expensive material, especially the Calcuttas, and everybody's asking for Calcutta gold, and Borghini, and these, which is a quarry in that market. Sorry, but it's demand.
Okay,
I have been doing this long enough to where I remember when the Calcuttas were not expensive at all. It was one of the less expensive, if you will, marbles. White Carrara was more expensive at one point.
So I'm going to give you an analogy. Is it similar to like oak has become more popular again, but they're using different stain colors and different visuals, but they're still oak cabinets, but they somehow inherently charge more for the new oak than the old oak? Is it the same kind of thing? It's really just supply and demand. There's more demand, and therefore the price has gone up, and that's just driving it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's commodity.
Yeah.
So it's gonna evolve in the market, and if they're not able to sell it anymore, they're going to sell it for less.
So
so
talk about the properties of granite versus quartz. Granite. Well, I guess versus quartz too. But I was thinking the properties of granite versus quartzite in terms of how they perform, or are they relatively similar to a homeowner? Okay.
It's you can go through a couple of the different products that we choose and why we want them for that. And that's driven by how the stone reacts, how hard it is. So when they talk about marble, they talk about, it's awful. It scratches and it stains. Not really. It scratches for sure because it's so soft.
Okay.
But it doesn't really stain. There's some oils and mineral oils and cooking oils animal fats that can stain it. But with the sealers nowadays, you're probably not going to see that. So it's the finish on the marble that usually scratches.
Okay.
That's why we talk about honing it, not bringing it so shiny. The granites are obviously a staple of our industry and have been around forever.
Right.
I almost said some of the manufacturers, I'd really not bring those up, of course, kind of gave some of the granites a bad name. They marketed literally to make granite not as prevalent in our market.
Yeah, they're marketing it to make it seem as though granite is a maintenance item.
Yeah, and it's not. It's so relative to what we use in a home. If you're scratching your granite or staining it, it's probably something else going on there. And not to say our clients aren't clean or the cleanliness and all those kind of things, but it's a pretty dramatic thing to have granite have issues. I think some of what's gone on there is there's gneiss is another mineral. So it's another classification of stone. Mm-hmm. Like there's marble, granite, limestone. Gneiss is a formation of stone that in our market you see all the time, granites, and they call it granite. A lot of it is a gneiss. So that's where you see a lot of the movement. Mm-hmm. A true granite is some of the more solid colors. If people can remember back Ubatuba and some of these more solid colored granites, they're more of a true granite, where a lot of these granites you see now that have a lot of movement to them or a gneiss, and some of those areas are softer than a true granite.
So how does that play with heat? Like with heat resistance? Because if I were giving you the spiel that I've used over time, it would be that granite has a higher heat tolerance. Quartz, because of the resins, you have to be a little bit more careful because, you can put a hot pan on there, but you're not going to leave a hot pan on there. Right. But then you have this whole element with any of the stones of kind of because they're inherently cold, there's like a heat shock element to, you could create a problem by putting something hot on any stone. Is that true?
Kind of.
Okay.
What's true is that in any of these products we're talking about, we can start with the easiest one, Corian.
Yeah.
A solid surface. Well, it's plastic. We all know what happens when you put something hot on plastic.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a given.
Yeah.
When we start talking about quartz, man-made, quartzites, granites, marble could probably accept the heat somewhat better. And a true granite, like if people have ever heard of blue pearl or some of these granite, they can accept the heat a lot more. Quartzites have dissimilar materials in them. So you've got something real hard next to something real soft and you put heat on it. Well, one's going to expand more than the other, right?
Yeah.
So when that happens, that dynamic can create problems.
Okay.
A little chip or it pops or something like that. Once again, this is all relative.
Because you can fix it, right?
Well, and we're in our kitchen. How hot is it going to be?
Yeah.
And how often do people, everybody uses wine, heat, hot pans to describe why their product is better than another.
Okay.
So you almost have to think of the marketing aspect of it.
Right.
Most people that have nice things, and that's the majority of the clients that buy nice things.
They have trivets.
They typically take care of them.
Yeah.
So if your pan's hot enough that you're going to take it out of the oven and set it on your countertop, regardless of what kind of countertop it is, it's probably more like you've got to get it out of your hands.
Yeah.
And then maybe there's an accident. If not, you're not setting a super hot pan on your countertops. Any type of countertop.
Right.
When it comes to the wines, I've been doing this literally my entire work career,
right.
If you will. And we don't get calls for stains. Think about that. We don't get calls for stains and going out and fixing stains. And we don't get calls for going out and repairing countertops where they've been, something happened from heat.
Right.
So once again, it's all relative. All the things that they're saying, that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
They can scratch even granites, even quartzites, they can scratch, they can stain, and you can have issue with abrasion. So if you think about all of these products, they're literally taken out of the ground or man-made, and they're abraded. They rough grind them to get them completely smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And then with abrasives, sandpaper. And then they bring that up to a level until finally they're polishing it. And it's super shiny. So in essence, anything that you've been able to put a shine on, you can start taking it back off.
Okay. That makes sense. So one of the things, you probably don't even remember this conversation, but many years ago, we were in a meeting and you were describing how some stones, that sealers are prevalent in the market, but some stones really don't even need the sealer, because if you have an issue, a lot of times it's just the contours of the stone in the most minute manner. Right. Now, I want you to tell me that story again with a camera on us and people listening, because I won't ever do justice how you described that is the case. But talk about the use of sealers and what's the purpose of them? What are they really being used for? Are they mostly being used just to make people more comfortable and for the marketing aspect? Or are they really performing a service? And talk about that contour of the stone thing.
Sealers really work. So we'll start with that.
Okay. And is there a difference between sealers, like a good sealer versus a bad sealer?
There is.
Okay.
There is. And there's it's what's called solids, and then the delivery system. So what you have is you have whatever the product's using as their either resin that's in there or siloxanes, they're called. And then there's a delivery system. So when you're looking in the market and there's a water-based or a xylene, like thinners, like an alcohol-based, well, those are delivery systems. So the reason they smell bad and they're real watery, that's not what's going to stay on your countertop.
Okay.
That liquid is typically the delivery system for whatever solid's going to end up in your countertop.
Okay.
So delivery systems, one.
Okay.
Water-based systems don't penetrate as deep into stone as like a xylene-based penetrating sealer. All of the sealers that we talk about during this discussion are penetrating sealers. They're going down into your stone. We don't want anything topical, anything that would lay on top, because that's creating a maintenance situation where you're going to have to maintain it.
Yeah.
So it's not like what people think as wax or when they think of sealers, sometimes they think, can you come and reseal my countertops? They're looking dull.
Yeah.
Well, sealers don't do that. See, they're looking dull back to that abrasion thing that we were talking about.
Right.
So it would have to literally be refinished. The conversation you're thinking of, and I think that has been a long time.
It
seems like it.
It's probably been 7-8 years, I bet.
Yeah. So if you were to take a granite and cut it in half or a quartzite or anything, it would be like when people zoom in on the moon or zoom in on your skin or whatever, there's pockmarks. There's a bunch of little craters.
Okay.
And depending on the stone, there's more craters and deeper craters. So once again, going back to that conversation we just had about topical versus penetrating, the sealer goes down and it goes down in all those penetrations. It doesn't fill up the hole. It goes down in all the holes.
Okay.
And it all goes down in all the crevices. So if you get oil or wine or any of these things that you're talking about, even water, it goes and it lays in that hole like a little puddle.
Okay.
The sealer is keeping it from penetrating down further into the hole, but it's not keeping it from being in that hole. Yeah. So when people think of, I still think that I have a stain, well, most likely it isn't a stain. Most likely it's going to go away.
Yeah.
Once again, talking about relativity of what's relative in our world and what's not, is we did countertops for years without sealing them. I'm showing my age, but for years, you didn't know. The market for sealers came from people that made sealers for other industries, floors and so, hey, here's another place we could market it. Let's protect it from getting messed up. Let's the people that are worried about microbacteria and we can protect it from that. So there were several big sealer companies that make sealers, siloxanes, and all these that you would hear about. They started marketing to granite countertop fabricators. Well, a lot of times you don't market to a fabricator or a granite guy. You're marketing to the public,
right?
And that's where
to gain acceptance with the fabricator.
Yeah, it's just like when you see TV commercials about medicines and they go talk to your doctor about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And you walk in and tell your doctor, hey, well, it's the same thing. Hey, do you think I should seal my countertops? So we started sealing countertops just because it really wasn't where we wanted to emphasize it or need to emphasize it. A lot of people did it as point of sale. They could make money off it.
Sure.
So it just kept being passed down to the end user. It's kind of the same thing that happened with the Quartz. They marketed to the public and said, your granite can stain and your granite can hold bacteria. Remember even the radon scare where they started marketing that granite countertops had radon in it. Well, if you go in the basement of this place, it's got radon in it. Radon's in our world.
Yeah.
So it's definitely in a rock. But, the fact that, you're not going to be enclosed enough to have it bother you.
Right.
So that's where that sealer conversation always takes place. I'm not opposed to using sealers. We use them. I always like to think of them as it makes everybody feel comfortable, and it does protect things. There is some stones that are lighter stones, have more holes in it. If they're softer, even the granites, the gneisses of the world, they can be a little bit softer and they can show moisture in them. Most of these sealers are sealers that can allow the moisture to leave. Back to your question, are there better sealers than others?
Okay.
Well, you want sealers that, if you're going to put them on your countertops, there are also sealers that can breathe.
They can breathe, yeah.
They can let the moisture
kind of like tie back on a house almost.
That's exactly right.
It's interesting. Yeah, as you talk about it, I think of when you talk about the penetrating sealers, I think about like we use Tech's Power Grout product because it's a penetrating sealer in that grout. And we've never had an issue with that grout from the time that we used it. And I think if you're using a penetrating sealer, like I didn't even technically know that the sealers that you did use were penetrating in the stone. So that's just one more piece of information that you can give somebody to say, listen, you really don't have to worry about these things.
Yeah. That's why some of the Thompson water seals and some of these, they think of that as being, most of those are, you can see they're that they change the finish and they're topical. Excellent sealers do the job of what they're meant to do, but not for our industry.
Yeah. There's two other products I want to ask you about just because either you do them, in one case I know you do them, in the other one I'm not sure. Are you seeing an increase or a decrease or just a constant similar usage in porcelain slabs?
We do a lot of porcelain.
What's the application that you're doing it in more?
We do it more on, like if you were to make furniture pieces.
Okay.
That can go outside.
Yeah.
We just did a real beautiful grill that the entire grill's made out of porcelain.
Okay.
Excellent use for that. We use it a lot for walls. So
like shower walls,
stuff that we used to do a lot of marble in. We do it in a porcelain because the maintenance is zero.
Yeah.
Zero. Nothing penetrates it. It's zero. A lot of fireplace facades. We're not, just to throw it out in the market, we're not real big fans of doing it for countertops. Okay. Not at this point. Most of them are, 6 millimeter thick or 12 millimeter, half inch and quarter inch. And so about the only edge you can put on is leave it thin, or you can put a mitered edge on it to make it look thicker. Well, that's a real vulnerable point where that 90-degree angle happens at your sink, by your stove. And it's almost impossible to fix properly.
Okay.
You could take a chunk out of a piece of stone and we could probably fix it and you would never know that we fixed it. You can't do that with a porcelain.
Okay.
If it chips or breaks on top or the corner gets smacked off of it, which is the tensile strength is really, it's almost like glass.
Okay.
So stone, you can hit something bluntly on the edge of stone if it has a little round on it or even a little bevel. And most likely it may not even chip it, where that same blunt force on a piece of porcelain would break.
Okay.
So, but the porcelain manufacturers, and there's lots of them now, and it's here to stay.
Okay.
But it's getting thicker, and it's getting through body. What they call it is the porcelain is being able to show the same veins and color all the way through it. So we call them solid bodies or through bodies.
Okay.
And I think once that industry gets to there, you're going to see more of it. But once again, the porcelain, what we found is we use it a lot because we're real comfortable using any type of material. So you have stone fabricators that they're like, hey, that's just a big tile.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work with it. It's a big tile. Get a tile guy to do it.
Yeah.
You got tile guys that are sitting there going, oh, that's just a big piece. We don't deal with that. That's a countertop guy.
Yeah.
So we fit in that niche market very, very, very well, just for the fact that we're real comfortable using it. So we do it on homes, on facades, on the outside of homes, and that's becoming a lot more popular. And so you're going to see it a lot. You're going to see a lot of porcelain, but maybe not as much in the countertop market as except a niche market.
So it's interesting that my exposure to it more recently was at the IBS, the International Builder Show. Mm-hmm. And you saw the slabs everywhere. And the way that they were positioning it is they were literally doing the undermount cooking. The induction stuff under the porcelain slab, where you could literally just set your pan on the slab and it'll just cook because it has that high heat capability.
Yeah. You can't get it hot enough with anything you have. Yeah.
But my understanding, practically speaking, was that it's a more difficult fabrication and that there aren't a lot of people that are capable of working with it effectively. And even some that are capable have no interest in it because it's a pain. And I know that you guys do a lot of it, which is actually comforting to me because that's helpful for our business. We haven't really run into a clientele that's used it yet, but I wondered if you were seeing it being used in the market.
I think they're struggling. The porcelain market itself is struggling marketing to the end user.
Yeah.
And as we just spoke earlier, if you don't have a broad part of the public wanting something, it's going to continue to be that niche.
Yeah.
We do a lot of it just because we're capable of it. A lot of the designers and builders that want to be in a newer product are using it, but we don't emphasize it in the countertops.
Yeah.
So
it's just it's one-off for just focus oriented areas.
Yeah. It's extremely nice looking.
Oh, it's beautiful.
The maintenance
it's amazing.
is zero.
Yeah.
So the attributes are incredible, but it's just that until we can get it to where edge profiles work well on it and rounded and, some things like that. Plus it's extremely heavy at that thickness.
Is it?
So that'd be the next issue that they're dealing with. So, and it's, as far as talking about cost, it's very expensive to do.
Yeah. How about concrete? Are you doing concrete countertops, or is that just a player in the market that you stay away from, or what?
It's another one of our niche markets that we do because we do it along in conjunction with our terrazzo countertops.
Okay.
So we pour terrazzo countertops and we pour concrete countertops.
So what would you tell people in terms of the functional use of concrete countertops, the durability, the sealing of those? How do you guys look at concrete countertops?
We look at concrete countertops like if you were to do wood countertops.
Okay.
So, and those are possible. If you've seen some wood countertops, have you ever dealt with wood countertops very much?
Are we talking about like
literally wood?
Like the true, like live edge, even stuff without. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So you basically have to think of that in the same way.
Okay.
Where in a frame of mind, because what's going to happen to concrete is it's going to patina some. So if you're really uptight about, and not in a bad way, you want to make sure that your stuff always looks the same, and you can just wipe it off and it's exactly the same and smooth. And concrete countertops would not be your thing.
It's going to weather, so to speak, over time.
It's for sure, and they can be refinished. That's another thing we haven't touched on as far as stones that are soft, marble, concrete. Soapstone, which we haven't touched that subject.
Yeah.
So soapstones they're extremely soft. Soapstone, the reason they call it soapstone is because of the talc.
Yeah.
They're full of talcum powder, if you will. So the softer they are, the more talc that's in them. When you rub them, you're filling the talcum powder.
Yeah.
You're filling the soap. So they can be cut with a regular carpenter's skill saw.
Yeah.
With a regular wood blade.
Yeah.
So, and we put oil on them to darken them, but they're basically impervious. So they don't really stain. They show whatever's on them, like a 1/16 of an inch deep, and then it just dissipates. Most oils, if you will, that get on something will dissipate. It evaporate eventually. But so concrete, you see it a lot in bars.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're doing a really cool bar downstairs or even upstairs or outside, we do a lot of concrete outside. And it can weather and it can look nice outside. And it holds up to everything really well.
Mm-hmm.
So we do but it's a niche market when it comes to everyday use.
When you do those, are you forming them on site and doing all of that work you're doing on the shop, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We try to precast anything we can. We try to avoid doing anything in the house when we don't have to.
Well, I think just the curing process and the change of temperature and humidity and everything else would be almost impossible to control in that, especially in our Indiana environment,
right,
to make it work. And and when I watch people form them and pour those things on site, I always just kind of cringe thinking I can't envision this lasting.
Well, it's always been promoted as a do-it-yourselfer kind of thing.
Yeah.
Over the years, there's Chang Design, which was like this original guy. If you look up concrete countertops, you'll run into like Chang Design and some of these guys that have been doing it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And they've perfected it to the point where there's another guy, Buddy Rhodes, that was real huge in the industry. And I've spoken to him a few times, and he likes the fact that we precast it. He struggled with a lot of those earlier designs, and he would promote precasting it as well.
Do you do anything with wood? Or no, just all stone? I just was curious when you mentioned it.
We have a person that we use that we buy them from. So we've done big islands out of them.
Yeah.
So the entire countertop is like a wood butcher.
Yep.
We've literally done several of these big projects where they for skinning deer and stuff, and up in these cabins. And so we like the wood,
mm-hmm.
and they're beautiful countertops. We've done them on some pantries and stuff, but they're not very practical.
Yeah.
They're just not, the maintenance isn't very good on.
So is there anything that you kind of see in the marketplace or deal with that you're not a big fan of for how it functions?
No.
Okay. I mean, I would think that most of the stones, whether it be granite or quartz or quartzite or any of these products, they all have their places where they may best operate, but they're all good products. It's just what's in the eye of the beholder, right? What the client wants, what they're looking for.
I think as long as you educate the end user, don't just educate you,
right?
We want to make sure that the end user understands what they're getting. So a lot of times our first, initial visit, if you will, with a client is all of the above. What kind of colors are you looking for? What do you feel about maintenance? A lot of them are bringing it to you. So you just ask all those questions. And when they go, we're a big fan of, in our shop, look at what you like, find what you like.
Right.
We try to show all of those different type of materials, not just the granites, not just the quartz. We try to show them all.
Yeah.
So then they can arrive at their colors and what they're really wanting to do. Then as they're choosing those colors, we'll explain the attributes to these stones. This is what this stone is, what it's made of, how it's going to react to being in your kitchen or your countertops in your bathrooms, those type of things. A lot of people bring us the question all the time about, marble, isn't it this? It can be some of those things that you're being described,
mm-hmm.
Either online, because we are, our clients are so educated, so I always tell them, where did you get your education? Who's telling you this?
So let's talk about marble literally from that perspective for a moment. So because even the quartz manufacturers have done, I would say, a reasonable job of creating visuals that mimic the look of a marble
mm-hmm.
without the perceived maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there are designers that every day in and day out, will live with that traditional marble product and
Absolutely.
Put it in high-end, beautiful homes all the time.
Every day.
How do you reconcile that? And you can say, well, one is it's just preference, but make the argument for doing a true marble over a quartz replica of the marble.
The only reason I would ever do something that's replicating a white marble or even a darker color marble is because you don't want it to be dull looking.
Okay.
For all intents and purposes, it's not going to stain. I know what's out there, and I
know
somebody's going to take wine and they're going to put it on their edge top and let it soak in forever, and that kind of goes back to my mindset. Well, if you're letting something get ruined, it may get ruined.
Right.
So I don't really want to drive it.
It's not the one-off, right?
It's not the marble, a real marble is so much better looking than a manufactured fake marble. They still haven't gotten there yet. The porcelain, absolutely. You can take a porcelain marble look and a real marble look and set them right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they've literally taken a picture of that stone and they've put it on there, and it's shiny and it looks nice. So from a broad distance away, I've been confused, fooled by it.
So you could make an argument if somebody wanted wall panels in a shower that you could buy into the idea of using a porcelain visual of a marble.
Every day of the week. We do that all the time. We have literally that discussion.
Yeah.
And using a porcelain lookalike is less expensive than a real marble.
Yeah.
So there's huge reasons to do like a shower or a fireplace facade, but I still wouldn't go to the quartz.
Right. To do that.
To do the mimic, because they just don't look nice enough. They don't, their veins are, I think they'll get there. The technology of printing, like they're printing, they're adapting that technology of printing the colors into the quartz. And so maybe someday they'll get there. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
So unless somebody is just really worried about the marble etching, and that's what we call etching. And that's, if you come into our place, we'll talk about honing the marble instead of polishing it. The reason we're doing that is we're saying, if you're going to leave it shiny, polished, high polished, it's going to get abraded and it's going to look dull in areas. It's going to get the infamous round ring from something that has lemon in or something, and it's going to make that little circle. It's superficial. It's just on the finish.
It can always be repaired for somebody that's worried about it.
We repolished several kitchens in our community every year.
Interesting.
And go in and repolish them. Honing, on the other case, is that ring that you're seeing, you don't see it as much because that ring that you're seeing is in the polished finish. It's not in the honed finish.
Yeah.
So we kind of tell people, hey, if you want this to look better longer, if you like that hone look, it's better to go ahead and hone them up front.
Not to jump around, but just because when you talk about honed, my mind goes to some of the different finishes that you can do on granites and what's popular today. And because you can leather some, like, will you talk through some of the options that you're seeing people do to kind of take the shine away, so to speak? Because matte finishes are actually very popular in the marketplace across all products, so that people aren't seeing either scratches in the wear layer or just whatever the cases might be when the light hits it. But talk about options in the granites and the stones. Yeah.
So obviously countertops for kitchen countertops or master bath, those kind of, it's what's practical.
Yeah.
So a matte finish honed is very practical, both in a man-made product and in a natural stone. Texturing is real popular. And in my opinion, sometimes they over texture things and then they bring it back to a shine. And on a natural stone, it can tend to look plasticky.
Okay.
It can almost look like it's not real. And I'm a big fan of, you're going to get something that's real, keep it real, if at all possible. But you can get textures that are water jet textures now for fireplace facades. And going back to a lot of time I get away from not just countertops.
Because it's more now.
Well, stone is used for just so much more than countertops. So it's, you always have to kind of describe it that way, but they can get almost crater-like finishes on stone to where it literally looks like lava rock, but it's still the natural stone. And so there's some really beautiful finishes. Obviously wouldn't be good for countertops. But back to countertops, it's you can get the brushed, which some people call it antique, some people call it leathered, some people call it, there's different names for it. But what they're doing is they're taking the abrasive, like we talked about sandpaper, and it's embedded in these brushes, like bristle brushes, and they brush it. They literally take that brush, and when we Rebecca, the dissimilar materials that are in there cause the undulation of the so it's eating out the soft and leaving the hard.
And are you guys doing that in-house or you are? Because I was going to say sometimes we're taking a slab and doing that application through you there.
So we would rather buy it already with the finish on it.
Right.
Like everybody, anything that you can buy, well, it saves us money, which means saves you money.
Sure.
So there's and they do it in a big factory, and they're doing it with a bigger machine and all that.
Yeah.
But we can take anything and apply a antique finish, brush finish to it. So we use the same brushes, and we've done it to concrete countertops, to terrazzo countertops, all the way up to really beautiful marble countertops. And when we're talking about the similar materials, so the veins that you see in stone is typically a different hardness than the plainer areas.
Okay.
Sometimes that can be softer, sometimes it can be harder.
Yeah.
Soapstones, a lot of times when you see the veins, they're calcite veins, or they're calcite, which is the marble portion of it. And they're typically harder than the soapstone.
Interesting. What material have I not asked you about that you touch?
Glass. Glass can still be an extremely beautiful countertop, and it can be layered. It can be thicker. You can go to a website called Think Glass, and you can kind of see. We have them literally made here in town, so you can come up with any color that you want, and we can do slump sinks, they call it. So we can take a solid piece of glass and melt a sink into it. And they're gorgeous. So glass countertops, you don't see them a lot, but it's another niche that we do. And that's one of the materials that you typically don't think of or see in the market.
This will be a silly question, but like durability, how do you position those? Obviously, they seem to be a niche product and something very unique. What's the maintenance on something like that?
None.
Really?
So there's no maintenance. If you scratch it, you scratch it.
Yeah.
It's a piece of glass.
Once
again,
you have to be careful.
Yeah, but we've done them in a lot of bar countertops.
Yeah.
So that they're gorgeous. We've always have one or two going, or close to it, especially with the slump sinks.
What's the price point of that relative? Like, what world does that fit in?
It's in the highest of high end. Just because of you're taking a piece of glass, whatever it is, and you have to cut it before it's tempered. So typically it's all thicker glass, and you're having to cut it, and the edges polish real similarly to the other stone, but it's extremely hard. It's not technically harder than quartzite, but probably
similar.
Well, just to understand, as we do, glass is silica all the way down to its rawest form. And that's what glass is. Glass is silica. Silica is quartz. Okay. So when you're looking at a glass countertop, you're looking at quartz, so kind of if you think of it in those terms. Get back to its base product. So, and then we take broken glass, put it all together, when you're back to terrazzo again. Yeah. You're putting it in a binder, some type of filler.
And I have seen that.
And there'd be Ice Stone is a real popular brand of terrazzo countertops. Of course, we make them in-house, so we don't have to buy them from them. So they're and then we haven't broached on some of the other stones. There's semi-precious stones where you see the different size agates. So they take agates from places like Madagascar, and they'll slice them into 1.25 inches thick or 1 inch, and they'll place them all together and hold them together with a resin and polish those. So those are semi-precious. And then you have they still call it semi-precious, but they're precious stones, like lapis lazuli, the real blue stone. So there's several of those in the market that are really expensive. And then all the onyxes. You have onyxes that come out of, people all have heard in the news of Afghanistan and, Iran, the Tora Bora region, the mountains up and through Tora Bora, where all your really beautiful onyxes come from. So we do a lot with onyxes. Once again, typically not kitchen countertops,
Right.
but bars, even though they're going to get scratched, but they still look beautiful. And, sideboards, just furniture pieces. Because all of this stuff that we've talked about, we make a lot of furniture pieces out of tabletops and dining room tabletops, with even the legs all made out of stone. Once again, not getting fixed into that countertop world where we think of stone as, say stone to most people, they're going to think countertops, when stone is all around us being made into all types of things.
Well, and it's interesting because the connection that I made with a local designer that we do projects with now was as a result of a friend of mine who they were looking for a custom granite sink. And I connected them to you guys, and you guys made a beautiful piece for them. And then that led to me having a conversation with the designer saying, hey, if you ever have a need, just, let us know. We'd be happy to sit down and talk. And now we're doing projects with them regularly, and it works out really well. But your ability to do those unique things definitely isn't lost on me. Do you real quick, do you use the glass to do backsplash material at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah. We've kind of done glass backsplash with a laminated color or something. So there's a couple of companies in the market that Seaches glass, if you've ever heard of them. Seaches has a lot of they make a lot of glass slabs where you can buy the entire slab. And once again, we've made countertops out of it, kind of in that realm of porcelain. You have to be careful with edges and all that. Yeah. As far as backsplashes and facades, they're that one feature wall in a bathroom, those type of things, they work really well. A lot of glass is really underrated. It doesn't come to top of mind when you're thinking of surfaces of different finishes, but it's a huge application and opens the palette for designers when they can't quite figure out what they want to use. That's interesting. Let's make the pivot now to business, because as you talk about your history and then obviously all the knowledge you have about all of these products, how do you go to market to get what it is that you're selling? So you clearly have many relationships, but are you going and doing buying trips and buying slabs for yourselves? And if so, how's that evolved over the years, and how are you doing that today?
Yeah, we go back to our previous conversation when we first started. Lou Carraro, kind of my mentor. He was born and raised in Italy and then moved here as a young man in the terrazzo industry. So as I started coming up in the market, and he saw my interest in the stone, and that's when I came into the shop and started working with just the stone, not exclusively, but running the shop there. We started going on some buying trips. So we would go to Italy several times and to Brazil several times. The Brazil market has been a slower market to get started in the history of getting stone out of the ground, but like in the early 60s, maybe. Well, now the majority of the stone that you go and see in a slab yard, which we call them slab yards, where all the slabs are, or Brazilian stones, they're probably the least worried about, at least they were, about finding a rock and cutting it up, getting it out of the ground and seeing what happens with it. So so we went there quite a few times. So after Louis got towards retirement, I visited quite a few places. We went to China several times, and that was basically on the business end of it. We wanted to see, everybody's talking about getting stuff from China, So to us, in our world, in our industry, the earth is a rock. It's got similar rocks all around the world. Is all a rock in one place or another. So we went there to see what rocks they were getting out of the ground, and was it advantageous for us to get them? So we went there several times.
I've heard the story that there are many times where people are buying a stone that came from Brazil by way of China back to us
Absolutely.
here. Is that more prevalent than actual stone that's actually being sourced in China and pulled out of the ground in China?
Absolutely. Yeah. The majority, a lot of the stone that's in China is kind of like a lot of the stone in the United States. A lot of the stone in the United States is your kind of monument and building stone.
Okay.
True granites, a lot of the ones called Dakota mahogany. It's a real familiar stone in our industry, but some of the black, some of the white, I hate to say it, a lot of the gravestones that you see, quite a few of those stones. And China's kind of the same way.
Okay.
It's that type of stone that you see. So a lot of the stone that you see in these yards come from Brazil now, because Brazil now has some of its own factories. That hasn't been that long in the making.
Okay.
A lot of the stones were shipped from Brazil to China, or more recently than not, and then to Italy. So a lot of the stones that you see, a lot of them are from Italy. They still process an abundant amount of the stone that comes out of the world, that comes out of lots of places in the world.
So they're getting in its rough form,
in a block,
and then they're refining it and shipping it out.
Yeah, that's right. It goes back to a little story. I would say real quick. The Ubatuba was Bruno Zeniet. People in the industry would maybe know that name.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Brazil and lived in an apartment there in 1963, and was one of the first people to bring blocks of stone out of Brazil to Italy to have it fabricated.
Really?
And when I met him for the first time, he talked me through the whole story and drove me around Brazil and showed me where he first started getting the material and how it took him like 9 weeks to load the ship, because they didn't even have the block and tackles and everything to load it. So very interesting man. But so the industry isn't as old as people think. Stone's been around forever.
Literally forever.
Marble, you go to, people talk about marble, and it's funny, they'll tell a story about how beautiful it is. And they were in Europe, and they went through this church, and there was this beautiful marble. And all. It's not. It is gorgeous. But when you go there and start looking at it, it's that patina that we're talking about. It's old, it's worn out, it's walked on. It's in some places it's smooth, where people have touched along the handrails, so it's smooth. But it's historic when it comes to marble, and marble coming out of Italy. But a lot of the stones you see now are recent things. They're like I said, Brazil and a lot of these places, they'll scrape off 20 feet of dirt, and there's a rock, and they'll start cutting it, and they'll polish it and send it to us. So if it's going to be around for a while, it gets marketed. If it's one-offs, if you will, it doesn't get marketed as much.
So
Turkey.
So are you still making buying trips today? And if you are you competing for some of those stones with other people like yourself that are making those trips?
Kind of. So of course, I typically would go once or twice a year.
Okay.
The COVID kind of put a nix on that, obviously. So I'll go again maybe at the end of this year, beginning of next year for sure. And a lot of the stone that we buy is more the relationships of who you're buying it from. So I've been to many quarries in Turkey and Portugal, lots of different ones in Brazil, of course, lots of different ones in Italy. But the relationship that you're going to these places for is to really build the person that's going to be looking at stone for you, because you can't go all the time.
So it's kind of like finding a good restaurant where they kind of get to know you, and and you go in there and you know what experience you're going to get.
That's right.
And so did that evolve during COVID to where you can trust these people are sending you this types of things?
It evolved way before then.
Okay.
That's kind of the point. It evolved way before then. The going there, of course, you go and see what they have at the moment.
Yeah.
So whatever they have, just like people here, they'll go to a yard. Well, these just are yards on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not looking at a few slabs. You're looking at 5 blocks that they've cut, or there's 5 blocks that they haven't cut. So even some of these buying trips that people talk about, sometimes you're fortunate when you go and you'll run into these materials that you love and you buy and you get.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's, once again, the personal relationship, or you're going and looking at blocks for a project or a particular material that you're wanting, and you go and look at the block. You still have to, have the respect of them that they're going to send you pictures and photos. And since you're not touching it or looking at little micro fissures and all the stuff that's on the slabs, once again, it's a rock.
Yeah, they're going to tell you. Just have to trust that they're going to tell you the truth about that stuff.
That's right. So you could buy a lot of material if you have good relationships. And I've got 30-year-old, 35-year-old or longer relationships with these people. You can buy a lot of stone without ever going and putting your hands on it. So, but when you're getting newer people and you're just needing to keep that relationship fluid, it's important to go there. And they come visit here.
Oh, do they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you have your relationships that you built over the years. They come and visit us.
So how has
new material coming out of the ground?
Yeah.
Those type of things.
How has your approach, if at all, changed from when you opened Victory a handful of years ago and today in terms of what you stock and what you show? Is it very similar? Like has your approach evolved over the years, or is it relatively similar? In other words, you guys have a very nice selection of options from, I'll say, from low to high, and then some, right, of product in there where you can go in and see slabs. Have you changed that approach at all?
Not really, because so all the stone that we have in our place is for our end users. So we're kind of done. We're the end for that stone. We're in a distributor. They'll rotate their stock and send it to a lower market, or if it's not moving, we don't have that.
Yeah.
Our stone that we show, for one, is trying to show them, your clients, our clients, the variety of stones that are out there.
Yes.
Kind of what we talked about, what are all these different things? We try to show all these different things.
Yes. Okay.
And then explain why they act the way they act. We try to show them in a way to where they're not going to go to all the other yards and it's all the same thing.
Right.
So we're trying to broaden the horizon, if you will, and make it to where there's more out there than you're seeing in these yards that have to be created more like a commodity.
Yeah.
They got to move them.
Right.
We want to move them, but they've got to move them faster.
Yeah. I look at you, and maybe this isn't an appropriate term, but I'm just going to use it because it's what I think of. You're almost like a boutique business that has, it's like when my wife goes shopping and she wants to go to a place where they don't have everything that everybody else has. She likes to go to those little shops where they buy from this place and that place. And to me, that's you guys, is you're going to have a little bit of everything, but you can get your hands on anything. That's the other piece, right?
Anything.
Yeah.
It's like I had a client once and she said her daughter, she'll go to a restaurant and she'll go through all the selections, being really picky, and say, well, what's not on the menu? So it's, so we're kind of like, what's not on the menu? We're kind of those people. We have a menu, and we can describe you everything, but there's a lot of things that are not on the menu that we want to bring to you. So we emphasize a lot on being able to give the market something that they don't see or have until you show it.
Right. They don't even know they want it. Yeah.
We can, at Victory Surfaces, literally can do anything that you've ever seen in the world. And I know that sounds like, wow, the world, it's so big. Is that even possible? It is possible. Yeah. I've been to the majority of the countries that are strong in the stone market, and many, many shows, and saw many, many things that are made. And we can do it all right here. You don't have to leave Indianapolis you open up a magazine and look at anything that's in there and ask us if we can make it. We can not only make it, we can source it, and we can get the material. And we like to be those kind of people. You know, you don't have to go somewhere else. I get it. Flying to New York to look at the boutique shop or going to Chicago. I understand some of what our clients are doing is a kind of a journey to get to something that they like and they want. So I would never persuade them not to go, but they don't have to.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What can remodeling partners or new home builders or contractors like ourselves, or even the end user client, do on our end ahead of time to make your life easier, if there is anything? I'm curious the things that we, not my company per se, but just the industry does that just makes it more difficult than it needs to be. I'm just curious.
I think the difficulties that I see, we want to talk about remodeling right now.
Okay.
Remodeling, obviously the people are there. It's not like some of these homes that are, you know, the homeowners coming by on the weekend and seeing the progress of their house.
Right.
And then they go back to their bed and back to their kitchen and back to their master bathroom. Your clients aren't those people.
Right.
Your clients, you might be remodeling a master bath and they're living in that bedroom and using the upstairs bath.
Yep.
Or they're going out to eat all the time. So what I find the most is no matter where you put us, we're the last ones. We're the last ones.
Yeah. You just finished something for us yesterday. You're the very last piece. You're the stopgap between me and the final check.
Yeah. So I understand that they got to,
not always though.
That the plumber has to be the last one, right? Because we've got to be in. But in essence, nothing's going to happen until we're done.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that out of this whole conversation that we can't do. We can fix tons of problems. We can fix and not even have any problems, make the thing go smooth as all get out. Can't fix time. We can't make it up. We can't make up days. You know, if the cabinets are supposed to be there in 6 weeks and we take 4 weeks to do something, if the cabinets don't come for 9 weeks, we're still that 4 weeks guy.
Yeah.
And the people talk about getting in line and can we hold a spot? In almost any production type facility, there is no slot except the one that's being used when you're in it.
Yeah.
So if you're queued up, if you will, to start having your stuff made, it gets made and it goes.
Yeah.
If I hate to say, if you kind of get out of line because of all these reasons that we can't control, it's really hard to make up those days.
Right. 4 weeks is 4 weeks, give or take. And that, I don't think that's unreasonable, at least from my perspective. I've had a very easy time for many, many years telling people that from the time we get to template to the time that you guys do your install is typically right around 4 weeks. Sometimes we actually get surprised a week early, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And you've always held true to it. So that makes sense to me.
So it's more,
it's expectation setting, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's more like when we were talking about educating the client in what they're getting, the stone that they're getting and all that. What I see a lot of times in the industry, and I understand it, it's you may be competing for this job. Well, a lot of times if pricing's close, sometimes not even close, you know, but if they're able to justify it, sometimes the guy that's saying that it's going to take 2 weeks, guy or girl, that's going to, you know, saying that it's going to take 2 weeks earlier that they're going to get finished than you know, you have to try to get over that hump. Well, sometimes you can't get over the hump if it's not real, if it's not there. If you may, you know, so.
And if they can get it done in 2 weeks, what does that say about their backlog?
That's right.
I mean, honestly.
So it's better to just be upfront.
Yeah.
You know, to sit there and like I said about it, if there's an issue that comes up that slows things down, you can't make up time. So you just got to make it up somewhere. And usually that's just the gesture of, you know, what you call that we're on it. It's not sitting back somewhere, you know, out of sight, out of mind. You know, you're on our mind all the time.
Yeah.
But.
No, and I think from a responsiveness perspective, you guys are outstanding. I can pick up the phone at any point and get that. And that's not in any way to like make this some commercial.
Sure.
It's just the truth. And those are the things that I think, I think it's our job to help homeowners understand that at every step of the way with every piece of the process and every product that we use, we want to be putting things in that we're very comfortable standing behind and that we have people that will stand behind with us. And then if something goes wrong, we deal with that, but it's it's the one-off. It's not the everyday issue. So
if it's happening all the time, obviously there needs
deal.
to be a change made.
Yeah, that's a different deal.
There's going to be issues, but it shouldn't be all the time.
Yeah.
So, and we pride ourselves on not only timeliness, we want it done right. So if it's not finished properly in the shop, we're not going to make it. We're not going to, if myself or Jim or a couple guys go in the shop, they'll sit there and say, I have to work longer on this top. So we may tell you we're coming in 3 days. And if we know we're not going to make it, it's that call. Yeah. It's not the call the day of. It's that call and say, hey, we're looking at this right now. And we thought we were going in on a Wednesday. We got to work a little bit longer on this top. It's probably going to be a Thursday. Yeah. And most of the time, if we're initiating the call, I find if we're initiating the call on something that may not be good news, it's a lot easier than getting the call. Well, I thought you guys were going to be here. Nobody likes that call. And so we try really, really hard not to get that call. Right. If I'm getting a call and it's your guys have been telling me this, well, for one, I'm probably going to say, well, I don't know if that's, really the case because we don't do that. So we're trying to initiate that call so we never get the bad phone call. Right.
No, that's everything. Because at the end of the day, relationship drives everything. It really does. And when you do those things, all you have to do is work with enough people that don't give you the courtesy of that phone call to know that that's the difference.
It's the piece of, because we have the same thing. I mean, we're waiting.
Yeah, you're waiting on stuff too.
Yeah, we're waiting. The guy that calls in and says, I'm not coming to work today. Yeah. Well, all of our schedules get affected by that one bad call where I'm not going to make it and I'm not going to. So like I said, if you're initiating it, you may not want to make the call. Yeah. And then we also have a thing where, pick up the phone. If you see the phone ringing or somebody's called you, even if you don't have an answer, answer it and say, I'll find out. Or, I've always found that I think the reacting immediately is probably what we do best is take the phone call, try to find out the answer, get it taken care of right away. If you do it fast, I typically find if you're faster and if you're trying to take care of things right away, a lot of times you're ahead of everybody else.
That's really true. It's actually interesting just from almost a core values perspective to just have that mindset. Yeah. Another way, I've heard over the years, it's like, just eat a frog, just eat it in the morning, get that tough call done, do it first thing. The rest of your day will be better. It's not going to change it later.
Don't wait.
Just do it.
Yeah. Don't wait. Like I said, I'll take phone calls and I know I don't know the answer yet. And I know the person on the other end and I say, hello, hey, I didn't find out. I didn't go check or I thought I was going to check on that. I didn't. I'll go check now and I'll call you back. Yeah. And then make sure you do. Yeah.
Just own it.
Don't let it drag. Own it for sure. Yeah. Because it's not going away.
It's not.
And it's much more painful after the emotions kick in. Like you just talked about. You have somebody that's sitting there waiting and we all know what it's like to wait. Yeah. And we're all kind of impatient when we're spending money. And that's the way we got to look at it. These people have a set, but they're spending money. They're paying for a service. And when you're not getting service, we all know what it feels like when you're sitting in a restaurant and they haven't accommodated. We all know about how long it should take. Yeah. They come and they ask you what kind of drink, and then they come back and they take your order, and then you start waiting for your food. If they slip in, here's your drink, and then don't take the order right, then something's starting to go sideways. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I was going to be done, but that leads me to another question, which is your ability to staff and train people in the world that you're in, where you're having to teach some pretty precise things and stay on top of just a number of different types of products and all that knowledge. Have you had a hard time in that world or in this high demand world of staying staffed up? Or are you kind of in this niche that I could perceive where it would be a very intriguing business for people to get into, and there's always some form of interest for people to come work in a place like yours?
It's difficult. finding talent is difficult. I think for us, for anybody right now. I think the way things have evolved as far as trades. I don't know if you know this or not, but we started a in-house terrazzo apprenticeship.
Cool.
That's been really important to us because we just don't see the training out there. So we tried to focus on training up younger people and giving them. So our program is tied together with Vincennes University, so you can get your associate's degree when you're done with our apprenticeship program.
Really?
Yeah. So you graduate with our program with 36 credit hours, and from just being in our program. So you just take another 24 credit hours of anything that you choose through Vincennes University, and you can graduate from our program with an associate's degree and go on to get your bachelor's if you chose not to stay in the trade. And the reason we did that is we thought it would be important to let younger people know that there is that hybrid to where, mom or dad wants you to go to college and mom or dad wants you to go to a trade school. Well, we give you both. So you can go get into our program, get your feet wet in a trade, start building up your education towards a degree. Yeah. And then at the end of that, you could always go off and do your own thing or stay in the trade. Most likely you would stay in the trade because we pay really well.
So 2 questions from that. One, how long is the program typically for somebody that starts that?
It's you could go, it's kind of a hybrid. We do it on competencies, okay, where most apprenticeship programs are done on a year-to-year basis. Yeah. So you can graduate from our program anywhere from 3 to 5.5 years, okay, depending on the hours and how you gain your competencies. So in the associate's degree, you have to initiate that when you come into our program. There's several ways you can do it once you're in the program, but it's better to already know that you're wanting that associate's degree when you enter the program. And it brings a higher pay scale. So if you come into our trade, you go through our apprenticeship program, get your associate's degree, you actually make more than the person that didn't get their associate's degree. So it's advantageous for you to do it. And I felt like people should be educated. So sure, it's a good avenue to do that.
Yeah, because they're going to be more well-rounded in the end for you potentially as an employee. They'll have a better understanding. They will have applied themselves to do something above and beyond.
Right. We have a lot of smart people that work for us.
I'll bet.
And you can't underestimate that these guys that are back there rubbing on stone or installing countertops or installing tile or putting up marble walls, just because they're not a lawyer or a doctor doesn't mean they're not really well educated and really smart people.
No, incredibly and incredibly talented. I mean, my guys are amazing at what they do. Yeah. So has it been successful? Have you attracted talent?
Our last year was our first year of the program. So we have an in-house instructor that and they're getting ready to start the school year right now. Yep. And they'll do every Saturday, and sometimes they skip Saturdays, and they'll do that through the regular college semesters. Yeah. So this is, some of them are going into their second year, so it's kind of fun to see these young guys doing that. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Anybody that
I appreciate it.
Anybody that watches this, I think, has to get a tremendous amount of value out of understanding that they can kind of see through some of the marketing shtick that's out there with these products, and quite honestly, that there's also a local resource that has a really good handle if there are questions about options and products. Obviously you could start with me first, but sure. If you don't, then that is not a problem. And we may be calling Jim and Todd and his folks anyway, just because at the end of the day, we want to put people in the right products. And there could be a very large number of people that could watch this that would never be doing a project with us. They might be happy with everything in their kitchen and they might just need countertops. Or they might be redoing a shower and just want slabs or fireplaces and all these different projects. So
And we do a lot of conversations where designers, architects, builders, they'll call us and pick our brains for things, and we do not use us. But I'd rather people be educated and projects being done right and properly than go to that project that went awry and it was easy education up front. So we're always willing to take those calls.
No, I think that's wonderful. So how can people find you and your company, and how can they reach you?
Victory Surfaces, and we're online, and you can always call the office, come down and visit. Some people think we're on the south side. It doesn't seem to be, we're easy to get to. We're right off of the highway.
Yeah.
So, you can come and just browse around our shop. We're a shop. So it's not like some of the yards that you go to. We're a functioning facility. And if you come down there, I'm not saying done. Messy, but
it's getting done.
You're coming down there and we're working on
You
things.
have a showroom area.
Yeah, we do.
It just migrates into the shop, which is actually really cool that people can see things being done. Yeah. I think that's really cool. So
I think the biggest thing to take away from our company is that we're a service-oriented company, and we like to make things out of all the different products. So we're not fixated really on any one particular product.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, thank you again. Appreciate it very, very much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. If anybody has any questions, you feel free to reach out to us as well at the Lifestyle Group. If you have any ideas for podcasts that you'd like to see or topics you'd like us to touch base on, you feel free to reach out and send an email at info@lifestylegroup.com. We'd be happy to react to that and hit topics of interest to you. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a great day.
Do you have a home remodeling question? Or would you like to know what the best remodeling plan would be to fit your lifestyle? Submit your questions now at lifestylegroup.com, and we may answer them on a future episode. Stay tuned to see what advice the Lifestyle Group has for you on the next episode of the Do You Plan podcast.